Gordon, snap out of it. You're staring at me again. Come on, Dr. Kleiner, is it gonna work or not?
We just went to Alpha about 5 weeks ago in mid-March, and we're right now heading towards beta as we approach E3, and we're targeting completion of the game about midsummer roughly. At Alpha State, we were basically able to play everything all the way through, and we're really sort of going through right now and doing a lot of the fine-tuning and looking at what the play testers are reacting to in positive ways and in negative ways, and turning up the volume on the positive and turning down the volume, or completely replacing the negative stuff, and really sort of trying to get pacing and art and everything ready to ship. We found from talking to people who played the first game that the way that Half-Life 1 started off with bringing you in to Black Mesa on the train and sort of introducing you to some of the characters worked pretty well for a lot of people to sort of set up the context of what was going on. So since Half-Life 2 takes place a few years after what happened at Black Mesa, and you, Gordon Freeman, the player, don't really know what's happened since then, we figured it would be sort of fun to start the player off the same way on a train ride into City 17. It slowly introduced some of the players and the mood and what's happened since Black Mesa along that path.
There you are. I wondered what was keeping you. Hope you didn't have any trouble finding me.
As soon as you arrive at City 17, you notice that the Combine soldiers are sort of keeping everybody and everything in check. There's scanners and cameras everywhere keeping an eye on you and all your fellow civilians as you get there. And as you move around, you find this character named Dr. Breen on the video screens and what have you, sort of telling you about life and how things are going in City 17 and sort of setting up the mood. And it's definitely sort of oppressive at the beginning of the game. Things are not, copacetic at the beginning. In the first game, we didn't do cutscenes, we really didn't do Easter eggs, but we did a lot of stuff that was sort of these little details where, you hit the elevator right after the accident in the first game, and the scientists came down, screaming, "Ah!" On their way down. And people really liked that. And then there was the one point in the game where the one scientist peeked out of the garbage can and was like, "I'm not going any further, I'm staying here," that he slammed it shut and stayed there. And that was sort of this dark humor, or sort of these little intricate details of the game that people felt, that told us, this made Black Mesa more fun. It made it feel more alive than a lot of sort of the shooting gallery games that they had played before that. So that's really important for us to inject as much of that stuff as possible into the game. And those attention to details by people like Mark Laidlaw and some of the designers, I think are really what sort of set Half-Life apart from sort of, their counterparts in the FPS genre. A good portion of the game does take place in City 17. However, you do find yourself moving to smaller towns and sort of dock towns in and around City 17. There's also some injection of alien life and sort of the supernatural that is now existing on Earth. So we don't take you off the planet to Zen, but we do sort of bring a little bit of Zen and that type of gameplay down here to Earth to inject a little bit of that gameplay. So it's not all just sort of downtown stuff. Well, the G-Man is at work again, and the G-Man has sort of commissioned you to sort of, move forward in this standoff. And as the game moves on, you find out that the scientist and the Combine and the aliens are sort of, there's this three-way power struggle going on. And obviously the scientists are your fellow colleagues, so at the beginning of the game, you sort of naturally move to ally with them. Throughout the game, you find out that different aliens are not necessarily allied with all of the aliens, and there's sort of a lot of sort of play going on with the three-way relationships that you assume that you understand at the beginning to sort of mix things up and keep it fresh as you go through the game. First, we put you in the buggy and we start letting you drive, which is, a great thing that a lot of first-person shooters are starting to finally put into the gameplay after years of gamers asking for that. So we had the physics-based, vehicles. And then as you start to get going, we have things shoot at you and put, distractions in your way. But we thought it'd be really fun if we had these roller mines that are sensitive to your proximity. And when you get close enough to them, they start coming out and they attach to your vehicle. And then their attack is to sort of rattle the vehicle around and to sort of move you off the road. So you sort of have to get in and figure out, if I've got these attached to me, how much further can I make it, or do I need to get out of the car and deal with them? And a great way to deal with them is with the manipulator gun, which is specifically designed to expose the physics. So you can pop those things off and shoot them into the water, or dispose of them any way you like. There was a great experiment called Trespasser a few years ago that I think scared everybody away from trying to do physics for a few years. And people slowly started putting physics in to do things like ragdolls and really sort of slowly move it in there. But again, I think there was this shyness from taking it too far based on some of the bad examples that are drawn from Trespasser. And what we wanted to do was sort of say, okay, we want to bring the world alive and we want to sort of make it feel more natural. And we basically introduced physics in a somewhat limited way. And the more we started play testing and seeing what people would do with physics, it started leading us to how we could extend that to make it fun. So doing things like you say, the roller mines were specifically designed to sort of play with the physics things. And then once people picked them up and said, I'm going to use these as a weapon against somebody else, then we said, okay, cool, we've got to set that up so that people can, have fun with those examples. And a lot of some of those types of gameplay come directly from us sort of putting a little bit in there, seeing what people do with it, and then expanding it to sort of mold to where the gamers are taking it rather than where we as designers feel that we should push the gamer. And that really sort of goes back to Valve's sort of philosophy of having this collaboration with the gamers, in that we're setting up the experience that the gamer will then author. And so there's simple things such as, how you get over a fence or something like that you can use physics for. And then there's more sophisticated ways such as taking the roller mines and using them as a weapon, or setting things up with a puzzle with a giant crane where you've got to sort of move some things around and then you start to come under attack while you're in the crane, and just sort of mixing it up a little bit there. And all of those things have come from watching the play testers. And again, we're at that stage now where we can sort of really watch people play all of the game in that way. And that's really when it starts to become fun, because we can see what's working and just give the gamers more of what's working. Well, first and foremost, we announced the September 30th date, which was too aggressive. And as we came up on that date, we said, we're not going to make it. We're further out than we thought. And I think it was less than 2 or 3 weeks after that, we found out that the source code was on the internet and had been pirated. And so there was sort of this, we were later than we thought we were going to be, and then the unthinkable happened. And it was one of these situations where you don't know how to react to it because it's never happened to anybody before in that kind of a way. And the impact on the schedule was unknown because it hadn't happened to us before and we were already late. So you sort of had this, this double down on the worst situation. So, but the biggest result of that really was sort of, we had to go back and we had to make sure that, we weren't vulnerable in our network code and what have you. But really bigger than that was the morale hit. You had artists and designers who had spent 4 years trying to create something that was going to live up to the expectations to all the people who played the first games and the press and people like yourself. And months or weeks or however long it was that we were away from finishing it, the incomplete product was taken and put out on the internet. And that's a downer. And really the biggest thing was getting folks reinvigorated to come back to the project to finish it. And it took a while, but I think once everybody did get their head wrapped around the situation and committed to saying we're going to move this forward, I think it actually made us sort of come back with a vengeance, because we had something more to prove than we originally had. The design was not affected by the source code. The networking code and other bits of code were definitely affected by it. We had to go back and look and see where might we be vulnerable as a result of this, and we had to go back and take precautions that obviously we don't want to talk about for security reasons. and go back and make sure that everything was as secure as possible and everything was buttoned down so that, the networking code wasn't just a free-for-all for cheats and these types of things. We really didn't say, oh, geez, we need to go back and it's not City 17 and there's no Alex. I mean, going back from the drawing board and starting over was never even really considered. Yep, it's playable start to finish right now, and as I mentioned, we're targeting summer for release, and really our goal this year at E3 is to just show more of the gameplay and take people a little bit further into the story.